Even in some of those areas we consider to have higher property wealth or higher income wealth, they face unique challenges, times of tax challenges, tax surcharges. You'll hear me talk about that because literally the biggest thing that's affected the bottom line of all my districts, you heard me talk about North Rockland yesterday, but all my districts is large ratables filing tax challenges and what that's done to the school district in the age of the tax cap. So restoring the GEA was very significant, and as significant as increases to foundation aid, increases to our reimbursable aids, and I look forward to working with my colleagues in the future, and I talked to some members of staff today as we tackle school aid funding going forward, is really getting into the intricacies and recognizing that we have some school districts with free and reduced lunch numbers that are over half of the kids in the school, yet they're considered to be high wealth because of property values, just because they tend to be downstate. And then I invite any of my colleagues to walk the streets of my district, and in some of these areas you'll find very expensive homes, but you'll also find families of multi-generations living in these homes because that's how they afford to live. Grandparents, parents, grandkids, all in the same home. And God bless them, they're able to make ends meet. But because of the intricacies of being downstate, where land is basically built out, they have significant property wealth, but it's a paper wealth, and it doesn't help these folks with their bottom line. So I want to thank all my colleagues, and I really think that this funding has been done in an equitable way for those districts that still had the significant GEA, and those of my districts that didn't, it's because we restored it at a faster rate in the last couple years, and now we're trying to look and find ways to help them through the foundation, through foundation aid and other aids. The second issue I just wanted to touch on was to piggyback on what my colleague who represents North Rockland with me, James Scoof, has talked about before, and he went into depth about the full-day kindergarten. And I want to thank our speaker. I want to thank the chairwoman of the Education Committee, my other colleagues, frankly, from Westchester and Rockland who have worked with me on this and by themselves on getting full-day K statewide for a number of years. But this is unfair. We have 9 districts where kids cannot fulfill the Common Core standards of learning. I have one of the residents that we worked with to try to push this proposal is actually, she's a parent of children in a district with half-day kindergarten. She actually teaches kindergarten in one of my districts, and she will tell you in depth as a teacher on the ground and in the classroom that they cannot teach the skills in certain areas like reading because there's not enough time. So they go to first grade absolutely behind the 8 ball with some of these skills. And how are they able to catch up? How are we as a state to say that that's okay, that we have learning standards, yet some of these districts don't have it? And to add insult to injury, we talk about very important things like pre-kindergarten, extending it to 3-year-olds. Research is indisputable about the importance of this type of education, yet they may go to full-day pre-K and take a step back to a half-day kindergarten program. It's unfathomable. So we work very hard. We work very hard in this House to advance this initiative. I think it's realistic. Look, I told many of the colleagues I'd like to have a press conference and say we're going to pay for it all into perpetuity, but we tried to come up with a proposal that was realistic and really get something done, and I think this is it. And I would just offer to my colleagues in the other House, to my colleagues in the executive chamber, we talked about this, and I think there could be a certain level of support, and let's work together because really this can be passed post-budget because the conversion aid program for 1 year is already in law. So we could pass it this year and it won't have any fiscal impact. What we're saying is turn it into a 5-year program so it's not a fiscal cliff and gives an infusion of aid to these 9 districts and once and for all then makes kindergarten full-day kindergarten a reality in New York, and we can also, if I will say, we could piggyback this bill with a bill of one of my other colleagues from Westchester who for a long time has been pushing then to make full-day K mandatory. Let's pass both these bills. Then when every district converts, we can finally have achieved that goal. One last point, Mr. Speaker, that I don't think has been brought up in this debate is the burden that it puts upon parents not having full-day kindergarten. In some districts, parents can send their kids to school for full-day kindergarten. In other districts, they have to find childcare for the rest of the day. So when we talk about trying to lift folks up out of poverty, when we try to talk about allowing folks to get into the workforce, get back into the workforce, find employment, one of the hindrances, and we deal with it in other parts of the budget, is childcare. Well, an easy way to try to solve that is to embrace this concept so we don't have folks on one side of the street with kids that aren't getting the standards, but also on one side of the street with parents that have to find childcare or stay home or not enter the workforce or have grandparents watch the kids or do anything and everything that our constituents do to make ends meet. And on the other side of the street, across the fictitious school district line, those parents have a little bit easier. By no means easy, but a little bit easier. So it's just another burden, I think, Mr. Speaker, that needs to be brought up. So I would just say, once again, thank you to all my colleagues for helping work on this. And to my colleagues in the other House and in the executive chamber, let's get this done. It can really be a win-win for everybody. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll sit down. I'm going to support this bill because there's some great funding initiatives in this bill. But let's get this done for the kids of the state of New York. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Montesano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the chairman yield for a question, please?
Mr.
Yes,
Farrell.
I will.
Mr. Farrell yields.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell. On the provision in the budget, the value capture financing for the MTA authorizes the MTA to cooperate with local governments to capture the value of MTA improvements through special assessments to help them offset their operating expenses and capital improvement costs. Could you tell me about how that will operate?
We did that in the budget?
Yes.
Yes.
It's part of this particular budget bill.
What is the question?
We haven't gotten rid of them. We haven't gotten rid of them. Oh. We hope.
Ask me the question again.
Well, I'd like an explanation of how this is going to work.
Oh, okay.
You know, with the MTA, I mean, it appears to me that, so if the MTA makes an improvement on their system,
Yes.
say Long Island Railroad, they're anticipating adding a third track.
Yeah.
And that third track is going to run through a couple of different villages.
Yes.
And apparently, according to their argument, would enhance,
Yes.
you know, the property values or business values
Yeah,
along
that's
the right
right.
of way.
That's we're buying it.
Right. So the point this looks like to me is they could work with the local government to have that local government reassess the properties,
Yes.
raise the taxes on the property, and take that increase
Yes.
and give it to the MTA to put towards its capital projects and operating expenses.
That's right.
That's the way I understand it correctly?
You got it after.
So we're imposing a new tax or a tax increase on people for the benefit of the MTA, who already collects
Yes.
substantial money from taxpayer dollars.
Yes. Yeah, did you say the value of property goes up?
That's, well, yeah, if
Yeah.
it's reassessed, then the property value will go up.
Yes.
So my concern is we're going to be increasing people's taxes so we could pay the MTA for the improvements they're making.
Yes,
Right? But we have to realize,
because the property, but their value of their property will go up too. They're
Well,
also making.
I understand that, and they'll pay more capital gains tax, and they'll pay a lot of more real estate tax also because of that, especially school taxes. But the point is, to me, it looks like the MTA is double dipping. It's getting money for capital improvements from the state to do this third track,
Right.
and then it's going to recover money from the villages that track runs through. And I just think it's inappropriate. And I think the members of this House on both sides of the aisle have to realize the MTA runs through all Westchester and every place
Yeah,
else
right.
also because of Metro North and everything else that
But
goes
there's
on.
certain places where it is. I mean, the big place they did it downtown around 11th Avenue.
Right.
When the when the MTA, when the train went through there.
All right.
And what's happening because of that, the whole area, the values of everything is going sky high.
Thank you, Mr. Farrell.
they
On
do.
the bill, Mr. Speaker? On the bill?
On the bill, Mr. Montesano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Farrell. I just want to point out to my colleagues that as innocent as this looks, it's really we're going to be imposing a tax increase on people. And really, it's a double hit because the MTA, through its capital projects, which are funded primarily through the state and through some bonding initiatives and through some federal grants that they get, are already being compensated for the work that they do along the right-of-way, whether they improve a train station, a platform, or in a case out in Nassau County, they're going to be adding a third track. I don't see the reasonableness for them to again be able to collect more money from the residents of these municipalities where this improvement runs. It's a double hit, as it will affect the people in New York City, it will affect the people in Westchester County where Metro North runs. So I think this is something we need to consider while we like to encourage the MTA to make improvements on their rights of way and do their work. I just don't think they should be entitled to collect the money twice. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Gottfried.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, would Mr. Farrell yield for a couple of questions?
Mr. Farrell, will you yield?
Yes, I will, Mr.
Farrell
Speaker.
yields.
Thank you, Denny. I have several questions about the legislative intent of Part II relating to the Commissioner of Health setting up a program to promote, quote, integrity and efficiency, unquote, in the Medicaid program through, quote, audit recoveries, efficiencies in administration, and other cost avoidance measures, unquote. First, the language says that participation in the program will be optional for each social services district. What would be the incentives or benefits for a social services district to participate? If the program reduces Medicaid spending in that district, then the district's local share amount would go down proportionally. Would the commissioner be authorized to provide other incentives or benefits or disincentives or penalties to induce a social services district to participate?
Well, the benefit to the social service district would be the reduction in Medicaid spending in the district, which would automatically reduce what the district pays for its local share. There is no other authority for rewards or penalties.
Thank you. Is it the legislative intent that the measures that may be taken under this program, including the, quote, other cost avoidance measures, unquote, must be for the purpose of promoting integrity and efficiency in the program and not measures to restrict the scope of or eligibility for Medicaid services.
Yes, that is the legislative intent. The measure must be for the purpose of promoting integrity, efficiencies in the program, not restricting scope or eligibility for Medicaid services.
Thank you. Under the so-called Medicaid global cap, the Commissioner has authority for so-called superpowers affecting Medicaid. But this program is not statutorily related to enforcement of the Medicaid global cap. So presumably, the authorization for superpowers under the global cap legislation would not apply here. What is the legislative intent about actions under Part II? Will those actions have to be actions that would otherwise be legal under the Medicaid law?
That is correct. Part II does not relate to the global cap authority. The Commissioner's action would have to be actions that would otherwise be legal under the Medicaid law.
Thank you. And finally, is there any limit on how high the total dollar amount of the Medicaid spending reductions under this program can be?
The language does not specify a floor or a ceiling for the target. That may be set. However, since the language states that this initiative is for the purpose of integrity and efficiency in the administration of Medicaid, the targets would have to be based on cost of administration of Medicaid in the social service district.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farrell.
Do I get the job?
Ms. Maliatakis.
Will the sponsor yield, please?
Mr. Farrell will yield.
Yes, I will.
Thank you, Chairman. Quick question. Well, not quick question, actually. I have a few quick questions. But how many bond caps are we raising within this particular budget bill?
How many?
Bond caps are we raising within this particular budget bill?
We have an answer. There is an increase of $8.7 billion in state bond caps over the prior year.
And how many caps is it? Is that, I think the number I calculated was 21. Is that correct?
5 caps over the governor.
So 21.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other day we had paid our debt service, and it showed that currently we have a debt of approximately $55 billion. So this $8.7 billion is now would bring that new number to what?
It'll be the same. Oh, this is just an authorization to borrow.
Got it. Understood. Now, right now the current cap is $47 billion, our debt limit.
I don't have those papers with us.
And I believe that we have about, if we were to issue this $8.7 billion, we would have about $2.9 billion remaining, which means we're getting very close to the cap.
Yeah, we are getting close. We'll acknowledge that.
Okay. And so how is this sustainable if we're getting close and we issued, and by the way, most of this would not be voter approved, right?
Yeah.
And so we did have the voters approve the $2 billion in the Smart Bonds Act, which they said they do want to see us invest. They do want to see us issue debt to invest in technology for our classrooms. We can't do that because we're approaching this cap, and as of right now, we're actually headed to maybe meet this cap in a couple of years, correct?
Yeah, well, you'll find the cap will get smaller as we go, and I think at 2020, I think it hits a number And at that point, it then begins to go back out.
Okay. On page 80 of this budget, line 26, we are authorizing a increase to the MTA bond cap from $37 billion to $55 billion. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Didn't we, if my memory serves me correctly, didn't we just increase the MTA's bond cap back in 2012? I voted
Yes.
against it, but you went ahead and did it anyway.
Yes, we did.
Okay. And that went from, what, 34 to 37 billion?
No. 41 to 55?
No, 34 to 37. Yeah. So in 2012, we increased it from 34 to 37, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're not up on, we don't have the papers for this discuss.
Okay, well-
But it does go up, it's up to about 50-something.
Okay, so I remember because I voted against it. It was 34 to 37 billion that we increased it. Right now, the MTA's current debt is $36.6 billion, which means we're very close to meeting that cap. So right now, what we're doing is we're authorizing the MTA to be allowed to issue up to $55 billion, which I find very troubling, don't you?
No,
Why not?
because we talked earlier about the third track for the people that come in from Long Island. That's very important. The Second Avenue subway, which we promised in 1929, and not we, the New York City promised in 1929 to build, and they're not. So there are things that we allow them to do, and yes, they're a very good bond. So I don't worry about it having any problems.
Well, I think we should be worried about it because we're authorizing an agency to issue $55 billion in debt when the entire state's debt limit and cap is only $47 billion. So how are we allowing one agency to issue $55 billion more than what the entire state of New York did?
Because, as I said before, there are things we need done everywhere.
Okay. Okay, on the bill, please.
On the bill, Mr. Maliotakis.
This bill is, I think, what we would call a big ugly. There's a lot in here, and I think at the end of the day, when we look at the amount of debt that's being issued, not only with what I mentioned earlier, the $8.7 billion authorization to increase debt caps all over the place, but more importantly, the MTA issue. This is really an April Fool's Day joke on the taxpayers of the state of New York. To allow a state agency as dysfunctional and mismanaged as the MTA to go ahead and issue up to $55 billion on its own, which is more than what the entire state of New York can issue, which our cap is $47 billion, I think is very, it's just unbelievable. It's really irresponsible on our part. Especially, and I warned of this back in 2012 when we did it from 34 to 37. I said it was not a good idea. Sure enough, the MTA continues to meet it, and now we're going to say they can go up to $55 billion. They're never going to get out of this. When are we ever going to fix this MTA if we continue to kick the can down the road with all these projects? The Long Island East Side Access Project, to show you how mismanaged they are and why we shouldn't be allowing them to issue more debt. It's been pushed back 4 times in the last 10 years. It is now scheduled to be completed in 2021, 10 years after it was supposed to be, and $6 billion overrun in costs. The MTA, we all know it here, is a black hole. The money goes there and we don't know what happens to it, and as a result, all of us come in this room and we complain that our fares rise, our tolls rise, that services are being cut, and yet we continue to allow the MTA to get away with this and do this. And so I think this is just really unbelievable that we're allowing this. And the response I got from the chairman that it's okay, I think that's something that everyone in the state of New York should be concerned about. While I'm on this bill, I'm going to also talk about this minimum wage increase, because I think to have 3 different wages for 3 different regions in the state is pretty stupid, to be honest. We look at California and what they're doing. They put in this minimum wage to go in effect for 2022. So, of course, our governor wants to always compete with everyone. We're going to do it now for 2021. I'll tell you what else we're in competition with California for, and it goes back to what I originally started this conversation on, debt. We are actually competing with California to be the most indebted state in the nation. These are not titles that we should be looking for. I think, in October, I went with my colleague, Ms. Tenney. We went to visit other parts of the state. As a New York City member, I thought it was important for me to see other areas of the state of New York, see a farm, see a winery, see the different aspects of life that we are voting on every day in this chamber. And I recommend to my colleagues that you do the same, because what we're voting on today is going to impact the entire state of New York. And when I look at areas that I visited, like, for instance, we had Clarkshire Farms that we went to. We went to a dairy farm in Chautauqua. Clarkshire happens to be in Herkimer County. Cuba, New York. If our governor spent time in Cuba, New York, instead of coddling communists in Havana, Cuba, he would have an idea of the impact that this proposal would have on the entire state of New York. In my area, in Brooklyn, right outside my district, we have Lilac Chocolates. They told me today that they're going to take, what they've been doing is they have a handmade chocolate operation. They're not going to have that anymore after this minimum wage passes. They've already ordered a $25,000 machine that's going to automatically create their chocolates. And so we are going to see jobs be impacted by this. We are going to see economies be impacted by this. We are going to see small businesses closed and big box stores replace them. And you know what happens when you go to the CVS instead of the local pharmacy, right? You're checking out and you're swiping your stuff at a kiosk, at a machine, because they're eliminating jobs. We're going to go to McDonald's. We're going to order out cheeseburger from a kiosk. That's what's going to happen here. I think it's very unfortunate. We have no exemptions except for a very small 10 or under in New York City. But outside of that, there's no exemptions for small business for either this or the family paid leave. And I think if we truly want to get people off of minimum wage, we should be investing in vocational training. We should be investing in giving them a skill so they can make a career. We shouldn't be trying to just pigeonhole people into a minimum wage job. As someone said earlier, minimum wage is supposed to be for entry level. It's supposed to be when you first, start out in the world. I worked at the Gap for minimum wage when I was in college, and I made $5.50 an hour. So it's not something that I think we should want for people to live the rest of their lives on. We should want more for them, and we should try to help them achieve that. And lastly, since education's in here, I just want to talk a little bit that I was pleased to see that the DREAM Act wasn't in here. As I've said before, I think that it's an inappropriate use of tax dollars. And I do want to take a moment, though, to say we should be looking to invest more in tuition assistance program for our citizens and our legal residents of this state. We need to restore the tuition assistance program for our graduate students. This House eliminated it back in 2010, never restored it. That's something that we should be doing to help our middle-class families. And we should also be looking to increase the tuition assistance income eligibility threshold so more middle-class families can qualify, because the last time we did it was in the year 2000. And we haven't done it since then. It's been 16 years. We are all talking about the rising costs here, right? Well, that's part of it, tuition. And so I think that we need to look at increasing the income eligibility threshold. Now, one last point I wanted to make on the minimum wage, because argument here is that the cost of everything is going up. It's true, the cost of everything is going up. But I think that we need to look at the policies that are coming out of this House, that are coming out of the City Council, that are hurting our businesses, that are increasing the cost of living. This $55 billion debt that the MTA is going to take out, that's going to increase our tolls, our fares, that's going to make it more expensive for the people of New York to live here. And then you'll come back and say, well, the cost of living is so high, we've got to increase the minimum wage again. It's a never-ending cycle. So we should be looking within ourselves of where we can cut costs and regulations for our businesses and for our residents, so make New York more affordable. That's where we should be focusing on. And I will be voting against this budget, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Mr. Johns.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman yield for just a short discussion?
Mr. Farrell, will you yield?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Farrell yields.
Now, Denny, this is bonus time because I'm going to solve the economic problems of New York State and the world. So, you don't get this for the pay I'm getting. This is really a very magnanimous thing for me to do. But, we need to, number one, raise the minimum wage at the federal level. We can't disadvantage New York State. That's number one. If you want to go to 15, it should be nationwide. Number two, there's a way to do it that won't disadvantage manufacturing or business in this country. I just want to bring up a name, see if you recognize this name, Denny. It's Milton Friedman,
Yes,
Nobel economist.
he comes from my district.
Is he still alive?
No,
Oh, yeah, well,
no,
that was my question for you.
he was a very good musician.
Well, he was the author, for people that don't know Milton Friedman, he was the author of a lot of economic textbooks for high school and for college. Nobel Prize winning economist. And he had an idea of what he called a reverse mortgage, a reverse income tax.
Yeah.
Get that straight. A reverse income tax. It's kind of like the earned income tax credit, but a reverse income tax says, look, if you're making $9 an hour, the federal government is going to send you a check to the equivalent of $6 an hour. That way, you will never have to work, as the governor, everybody else says, you will never have to work for poverty wages. And at the same time, we're not going to disadvantage any business. Right now, and by the way, that was championed by another guy you might remember, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan.
Yes.
A lot of people in this state might remember him. He was the one that championed at a political level the idea of a reverse income tax. That would have the advantage, as I said before, of not interfering with any businesses, especially manufacturing businesses. The reason why we have a big push, Mr. Speaker, for $15 an hour is because we have so many people nowadays that are making less than $30,000 a year. We've shipped millions of good-paying manufacturing jobs to China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Mexico. We're shipping these jobs out. We're forcing Americans that had good-paying jobs to work for less money. We're bringing tens of millions of immigrants into this country, some legal, some illegal, and they are working for less money and suppressing wages of native-born Americans. And it's not about race, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't make any difference. The reality is when you have more people fighting for lower-paying jobs, the wages are going to go down. And a reverse income tax done at the federal level would not cost us any more money in social services because it could be done through the IRS. And if you work full-time and you're making only $30,000 a year, guess what? You're going to get that check for $1,000 a month, and you can use that money for food, clothing, shelter, mortgage, whatever it is. I think that's a better idea, and I think we should be advocating for our representatives, Democrat and Republican, down in Washington to start doing something like that. But if we decide that we're going to raise the wages in New York State, it's not very far to this slip across the border to Pennsylvania or Ohio. I mean, we've talked about we're the yogurt capital now, right?
Mr. John,
Yes.
can you let Mr. Farrell sit while you expound on this theory?
No, it's all
He's
right.
been standing for 2 days. It'd be nice to let him sit.
I know. No, he's coming to a question in a minute.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it'll come out sooner or later,
well,
but
my question is, Denny, don't you agree with me?
Yes, yes, we called it we called it earned income tax credits.
Right.
And that's what we're doing now. But we're doing that, and it is done. They've done a fantastic job with that as it is now. And you're right. If we can do better, it would be a very good way to go.
Well, what I'm getting, and I agree with you, Denny, but what I'm getting at is we can't disadvantage New York State. In Western New York and upstate New York, we are losing 100,000 people a year. Yeah. That's the reason why every 10 years we lose 1 or 2 congressional seats.
No, it's because we're not growing. Not because New York State we're losing it because we're not growing as fast as Florida, Texas, and California go. Because we're the same we were 50, 40 years ago.
Right.
I think we're almost up to 19 million now.
Right.
So anyway.
Well,
digress.
and the other thing I wanted to bring up, too, is the fact that when it comes to the state budget, we're racking up upwards of $2 billion a year in debt. As my former colleague was just saying, yes, we do balance the budget.
Yeah.
And with a $150 billion budget, and it only goes up 2%, that's $3 billion. But we are not bringing in an extra $3 billion in revenue every year. In fact, with this budget, we're going to talk about spending more. We're going to talk about having tax cuts. We're talking about having less revenue coming in, more debt on the books. We're getting very close to the debt limit in New York. And I look around, and I'll tell you, Mr. Speaker, the only area that I see that we have money here is something called the New York State Pension Fund. And that's about $180 billion. And I can guarantee you that the workers in New York State, and the people that work or getting a pension or are going to get a pension, do not want to see an administration now or in the future going and taking that money. But if we have a financial emergency, that's the first place they're going to go, and it's going to affect some people that really can't afford to have their pensions cut.
Well, you know, New York State has been a very wonderful state. If you look over the last 50, 60 years, we've gone up and down. We've had all those problems, but we've always moved forward. I'm surprised at people talking about getting into debt. There is an amount of debt you can do, and the things we build would not be built if we didn't do it. I mean, everybody wants us to cut the taxes, but they don't want a pothole in their roads. They want to make sure their children go to school, and they don't want to be poorly in the classroom. But at the same time, they don't want us to do that. We are now cutting taxes, and we've been following that 2%, and it's doing a good job. We're trying to do both things. Get things done at the same time, don't waste money. And I think this budget does that. And we are going to accomplish things that are necessary, and it takes lending. And right now, I cry a little, you can't get paper that's above 1%. So right now, it's very good to borrow because the interest is not that. When it used to be 8, 9, and 10, I could see an argument there. But now at 1, I mean, that's like somebody's lending you money and don't charge you anything for itself. I'll do that. That works.
Right.
You know, so that's what's going on. So going to 53 for MTA means that bridge will get finished up there that we're working on. That means that the subways we've been trying to talk in New York City will happen. It means upstate, the bridges and roadways that need to be repaved, I've heard a statistic on, someone said it here, on the amount of people, amount of dollars that we need to, the amount of bridges and the amount of dollars that it's going to take to make sure they're all safe. Remember a couple of years ago, it was 20 years already, when the New York thruway, a bridge went and people drove off the road into the river and died. So we are doing that, but you have to do it through bonding. Right. And as long as you don't overdo it, and that's why 16 years ago, we wrote we passed a bill that said the amount of money we're going to use to borrow, and we've stayed within it. And as I said earlier, the number is going to go down a little bit more, and then it'll start going back up because the things we've done will have been finished, and we'll start to do more things.
Well, Denny, I'm all for increasing infrastructure. It creates jobs, and infrastructure jobs are good-paying jobs, and it's jobs that we need. Infrastructure needs to be upgraded in this state, no doubt about it. But what I'm talking about is, before I got here, a lot of the members, you talked about what happened, the gap elimination, everything else. That was because there was a downturn in the economy. Yeah. And 20% of the revenue that New York State gets is coming from Wall Street. Yeah. When things go down and they stay down for a while, when unemployment goes up, when you have a bunch of people out there working at low-wage jobs, they're not paying much in taxes, eventually those chickens come home to roost. And we still have to pay those bills, even in the downturns. Yeah. And there's a reason why we have a debt limit, and 90% of our debt is not even voted on by the constituents back home.
Right.
So I'm just trying to, flash the red light a little bit and say, hey, we ought to slow down. Some of this, there's a lot of great things in this budget. School aid increase, that's a great thing. But we cannot, it's unsustainable to continue to go on and pile on debt the way we're doing. And I wanted to bring to you and my colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denny.
Mr. Lopez.